I'm waiting for my cue so I can get started, right? Is that the cue? All right, so we are now live and ready to go. My name is Michael Sorrel, and I am the president at Paul Quinn College. And for the time that we have together today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics. And we're going to talk about we over me and how Paul Quinn College took poverty food deserts and common sense and created a new college model called the New Urban College Model. Now, just out of curiosity, how many people out there have ever heard of Paul Quinn College? All right, I love these crowds. Thank you very much. There's a simple quote by Euripides that you can see on the screen: nothing has more strength than dire necessity. In the situation and the circumstances that we were in at Paul Quinn, we understand dire necessity. And when you're in that place, you realize that you have no choice but to muscle up and get down to the business of making a difference. So this is Paul Quinn College in 2007. We have been a school that was struggling. All right, we were at that time 135 years old. We were a school founded to educate freed slaves and their offspring. And for the better part of our history, we have just been an institution that was happy to just take students that didn't have a lot of options and give them the tools they could have for a nice life. And there's nothing wrong with that, but when you make that kind of decision and you aren't well capitalized, you struggle. And decades and decades and generations of struggle led us to the precipice of disaster, quite honestly. So Boston Consulting Group came in 2007 and did an evaluation of the school. And what they came up with was that we were in bad shape. The school had 5 presidents in 5 years. All right, I was actually the 5th. I was the 3rd that particular year, which can give you some sense of how things were going. All right, and I wasn't even the first choice to be the 3rd president that year. All right, and the reason I know that is because I never even applied for the job. All right, I was working with a group of people. We were negotiating to buy an NBA franchise. I got a phone call. They asked me if I'd like to be president. I said no. We're buying a basketball team. I'm gonna get to be president. I'm moving to Memphis. And long story short, wound up accepting the job for 90 days, and it's been 9 years. But when people call you up and offer you a job that you never applied for, there are a couple of choices you have. You can, one, stop and feed your ego and say, I'm amazing, right? Or, and this is probably the bigger truth, no one else wanted the job. No one else wanted this job. We had deficits. Our audit had over 30 findings of non-compliance. We had 15 abandoned buildings. The entire front of the campus was abandoned buildings. And we had been in a serious enrollment loss. So we lost something from 990 students in 2004. By the time I got there, it was at 550. We would bottom out at 150 2 years later. So you got a sense of where things were. So when you're that far down, you're really unencumbered by a history of success. So you can pretty much do whatever it is that you want to do. So we decided, hey, we're going to become one of America's great small colleges. Now, when we made that decision, everyone looked at me like I was crazy. My girlfriend, who's now my wife, looked at me like I was crazy. The students looked at us like we were crazy because it was an audacious goal. But the reality of it is, when you're that far down, why not swing for the fences? And this is what swinging for the fences looks like. So we have our ethos. Our values at Paul Quinn College is that we believe in we over me. The needs of the community supersede the wants of the individual. Everything we do starts at that point. And we're excited about that because what it allows us to do is to really engage in the issues of the communities we serve. Our students are told, our staff are told, anyone who comes on the campus, anyone who comes into earshot is told, you don't get to be selfish. You are here to serve others, and that's how we built. So we have a theory. Urban colleges should turn themselves around and address the issues of the students in the communities that they are serving. All right, that's we over me. All right, instead of building buildings that maybe people will use or will make you feel better about yourself, why don't you wade into the issues that matter to the people that you surround? And this is how we did that. We have a set of beliefs. We believe poverty is evil. The community that we are in is a poverty-stricken community. You will see the numbers in a moment. We don't think people in America should live in financial insecurity. We think debt is bad. This idea that people who are from under-resourced communities that are Pell Grant students, that they can somehow borrow their way out of poverty seems a little ridiculous to us. Why would we put people in crushing debt on the promise of what can be better tomorrow? We don't subscribe to that. Number 3, everyone can learn. I'm fascinated by this idea that you hear from a lot of professors that, oh, these students, they can't learn, they're not prepared. Maybe you just can't teach them. And that's a big difference. So we challenge our professors. We say, look, find a way to engage your students. When I first got to Paul Quinn, lots of professors tried to tell us that. I said, I'll make you a bet. I'm going to go teach as well. And if the students can learn from my style, they can learn from anyone's style. And that's what started to happen. Lastly, we believe that all of us together, collectively, we can do better. All right? We have to be able to do better. We can't be content with people living in poverty, people living without, people suffering. That just can't be who we are in this country. So we have a formula. We preach hope. Okay? When you are dealing with a group of people that nothing's gone well, because if you are living in poverty, life hasn't gone particularly well. So you've got to be relentless about telling them there is a reason to believe, there is a reason to have hope. And we do that every day with our students. Secondly, we practice patience. If you have never been up, it's going to take you a minute to figure out what standing up looks like. So maybe you should be patient with folks instead of just goading them and making them feel bad about it. So we practice patience. We instill resilience. The first time you stand up, you are going to fall back down. So you have to learn to keep getting back up. You have to believe that up is possible for yourself. So we do that. We teach entrepreneurial thought and action. Now, I wish I could tell you I made that one up, but I stole that from Babson University or Babson College. Spent a lot of time up there. They are amazing with that concept. What we are teaching our students is that you need to be entrepreneurs of your life. You need to find ways to engage and solve the problems of your life. Lastly, we lead with love. And I learned this lesson when I was a college president for all of 2 or 3 months. I was 40 years old. I was very excited. I was under a lot of stress because Boston Consulting Group had told us that we were a year and a half from going out of business. And by the way, the board did not tell me that when they offered me the job. All right? Might have had something to do again with getting a call out of nowhere for the job. But we had a staff member, Ms. Dickerson, and I got into a yelling match with a young man in the middle of campus, and he and I were going at it. And so we're still yelling. He comes up to my office, and he and I continue to go at it. And then he breaks down in tears. And I didn't really know what to do with that. You know, I mean, I'm all in like my macho machismo, and he's crumbled there, and I'm like, do I hug him? Do I keep yelling at him? I wasn't really equipped for that part of the conversation. And he got up and left, and Ms. Dickerson told me something that completely changed my life and changed the way that I lead. She said, and this is literally in the term that she used, she said, baby, I know you love him, but you grew up in a house where you understood that toughness was part of being loved. It's like, I met your mother. She was tough on you. She said, but let me ask you something. If you never grew up with love, how do you know the difference between tough and love? She's like, if you want them to hear you, if you want them to understand, you have to lead with love. Radically change the way I do everything. From that moment on, I was far more transparent with my students. And I talked about, hey, I love you, I support you, we are here for you. It sounds a little hokey, but it is working. So here's what we have at Paul Quinn College. We call it the we over me effect. And this is what happens when you subscribe to our theory, to our ethos, to our beliefs, and to our formula. First of all, we are closer to the city garbage dump than we are the grocery store. And that is a true story. We are 1.5 miles to 2 miles from the city's garbage dump and 3.5 to 4 miles from the nearest grocery store. That's what our community is faced with. The city tried to turn the garbage dump into a super garbage dump, wanted to make it the largest garbage dump in the Southwest, and didn't bother to tell anybody, right? We're just gonna sneak it under the radar. A reporter called us, and we stood up for our neighbors. And my students formed a movement called We Are Not Trash. And it was amazing. We would go down to City Hall, carry signs that say groceries, not garbage, right? And the students fought back and taught a community to fight back. But that's what you do when your ethos is we over me. Dallas Symphony Orchestra. People would have you believe that folks from under-resourced communities don't care about the arts. It's actually the other way around. People in under-resourced communities think that the arts don't care about them. So we partnered with the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, and the Dallas Symphony Orchestra plays free concerts on our campus every summer. They build a stage in the middle of our parking lots, and you can come out, and over 2,500 people are now attending those. But the two I really want to talk about are the We Over Me Farm and the New Urban College model. So this is the community surrounding Paul Quinn College. It has a poverty problem. 67% of the residents have a high school diploma or less. 69% of them make $35,000 or less. Our unemployment rate is 15.5%. 42% of the population is not even in the labor force. And we are in a food desert, as we talked about. So this map can tell you a lot of things, but here's what you really need to know. The bottom half of the city of Dallas, it's two different cities. The bottom half, where the brown and the yellow is where the majority of Black and Hispanic people live in the city. The little red circles, those are census tracts that are in concentrated poverty or extreme poverty. The college happens to be at the bottom of the map inside the largest circle there, square there. That's where we are located. Dallas, interestingly enough, has the #1 child poverty rate in the country for large cities and the #3 poverty rate for all citizens in a large city. So this is what we did. We turned our football field into a farm to deal with the food desert issue. Now, people talk about that's brave and that's remarkable. Look, we didn't cut the football program at USC or UCLA. We didn't cut the football program at the University of Texas. We cut a really bad football program, okay? But we couldn't afford it. It was costing us somewhere between $600,000 and $800,000 a year. We thought we'd be better served creating a farm that allowed people in the community to have access to free and affordable food. We give away 10% of everything we grow, but just to show you we don't hold grudges, our #1 client are the Dallas Cowboys. So we have sent far more tomatoes to the NFL than we ever did football players. So we had a second problem. Our students couldn't afford the tuition price to go to school. 80 to 90% of our students on an annual basis are Pell Grant eligible. The second part of that problem is we can't afford to compete with more wealthy institutions around tuition breaks, right? We don't understand tuition discounting. Why don't you just charge what it costs to go to school? I mean, it's a radical concept, but again, when you have $1 billion of endowments, you can do things like that. When you have an endowment that's a rounding error, you cannot do things like that. And then another problem for us is that our students weren't quite prepared. The average student coming in is behind academically and socially. Our average grade point average is a 2.6 for our incoming freshmen. The average ACT score is a 16 to 17. The average SAT score is 1132, but that's for 3 sections. So we thought we needed to do something different. So that's what we did. We created a new urban college model. This is how it works. First of all, everyone works. Secondly, we reduce tuition and fees. Third, we don't charge for textbooks. So everyone works. On our campus, if you live on campus, you are required to work 10 to 20 hours a week. You are working in jobs your freshman and sophomore years on campus. That means you could be everything from working in the cafeteria to facilities, or you could be the receptionist in the president's office, or you could be the president's research assistant. All things in between. It gives us a chance to pour into the students on a more regular basis, but it also gives the students a chance to learn what work is really like. Junior and senior year, though, this is when it becomes special because you get to go work off campus, and you work in companies that are related to the careers that you have an interest in. So you have a 2-year head start on getting a job in these places. And I tell the students all the time, if you can't get a job there and you've been working there for 2 years, we have much bigger problems. All right, so this is how it works. These companies pay the school for the students to work there. It works out very, very well. Here's how it costs. Here's what it costs. So we were charging $23,875. That may not seem like a lot, But if you don't have it, you don't have it. So we reduced the cost of tuition and fees to $14,300, and this is how it's paid for. The Pell Grant is roughly $5,800. That's what we tie tuition to. Then you get a $5,000 work credit. Now remember, when the students work off campus, those companies are paying that to the school. So that covers that. So $10,800 of the $14,300 is covered just by you showing up. Then we have SEOG money, which is federal grant money, tuition equalization grant money, which is state money, or some combination of institutional scholarship funds, which are very, very limited. That gives the average student another $1,200. So all of a sudden, all a student has to borrow on an annual basis is $2,300 to go to school, which means at the end of 4 years, you've only borrowed $9,200. The average student before we adopted this format was borrowing at least $25,000 to go to school. So we've reduced debt burden from $25,000 down to $9,000. But we can get it down to $8,000 if you attend the Summer Bridge program, which gives you 9 academic credits for a 6-week period in the summertime. We think that gives our students a competitive advantage. Next up, free textbooks. Look, the professors have been teaching the same stuff for years and years and years. They're buying textbooks either because they wrote them or their friends wrote them. How about we just take advantage of all the free information that is on the internet, right? Open source materials, all of that. We challenged our professors. We said, look, if you want to charge, if you want to use textbooks, that's great. You just have to pay for them. Our students weren't buying textbooks not because they weren't interested, but because they needed the money to help subsidize their families' lives. If you know that and you don't do anything about it, I don't understand why you're in this business, right? Because you're supposed to be here because you care about the students. Find solutions that relate to their everyday lives and their real life problems. So people say to me all the time, I mean, that's nice, this is a cool model, but it won't work anywhere but your place. Because I thought some of you might be thinking that. These slides are for you. This is why it will scale. First off, students are already working, all right? 70%, 75% of the students who are dependent work 24 hours a week. 80% of the students that are independent are working 34.5 hours per week. The students are already working. That's much more than the 10 to 20 hours we're asking them to work. The difference is we're finding jobs that relate to the academic enterprise instead of working the midnight shift at a gas station or a convenience store or someplace else. Because if you're at the midnight shift, you are not at your 8 o'clock class. And you may be physically at your 8 o'clock class, but you are not mentally at your 8 o'clock class. And let's not ask them to do that. Let's be more sensitive. Here's another reason why it's scale. Because the inner cities of our country have a poverty problem, all right? They're struggling. So this model, which allows students to engage in the problems of the community, can help solve some of those issues. But it also is telling us that the students are coming to us economically strapped. So we need to be more sensitive to that. For the first time in the history of this country, the majority of our students in public schools are living below the poverty line. We have a poverty problem in this country. Here's another reason why it'll scale. There's ample supply. There are over 1,700 four-year colleges in inner cities. When you add the number of two-year colleges, you get up over 2,000. So the reality of it is we have lots of schools who, by the way, about 70% of the schools in the inner cities have less than 5,000 students. So you have lots of small urban colleges filled with students who are from under-resourced communities who have to work long hours to be able to go to school. That's our pool. So we have lots of possibilities for this. Next up, we're not the only people who have students that are coming to them that are underprepared for college. Per the SAT, 43% of its test takers in 2014 were not college ready. That number dips to 16% if you're African American and 23% if you're Hispanic. But here's a little secret about these numbers. They're inflated, right? Because the only people taking the test are the ones who are thinking about going to college. What about all those students that have checked out? They don't take the SAT or they don't take the ACT because they're not planning to go. You think they're college ready? Probably not. So here's another reason why this will scale. Everybody's concerned about the student debt issue. We have $1.2 trillion in total debt tied into student loans. The average student loan balance is $29,000. Our formula, the new urban college model that lets you get out of college with $9,000 in student debt, what would you do with that extra $20,000 of loan servicing that goes on for the next 20 years? If you got that money back, what would that do for you in your life? So why don't we give that money back to the students? So here's the payoff. Some pretty important people are saying some pretty nice things about our school. Bill Clinton came to visit our school a couple months ago and said, this college works the way we think America should work. Not bad. The New York Times says that we're an emerging national and community leader. Okay, I'll take that. Freeman Harbosky said that we took a small college and turned it into a big idea. So let's sort of recap this for a moment, all right? A former president likes us, the paper of record for the country likes us, and the best college president in the world likes us. I like the company we're beginning to keep. Now keep this in mind, 9 years ago we were close to going out of business. So, but here's the real payoff, my students. Do you see how happy they are? They're happy because they're not in debt up to their ears. All right, but let me introduce you to my students. The young man right here on your left, I guess, in the blue, name is Nader Molina. Recruited him out of Brooklyn, New York. His high school sent him to us because he was a student that needed to be in a place where he was loved. All right, Nader has severe dyslexia. He would have been lost otherwise. My wife and I sat at his niece's quinceanera and convinced his family to send him to our school. Now, truthfully, my wife convinced him because I'm the only one in that house that didn't speak Spanish. She did all the translating, but he's amazing and he is thriving at our school now. The guy next to him, Blake Irvin, is the starting point guard on the basketball team. We're his fourth college, wonderful young man, gonna be a success, just needed a place that believed in him. Sitting next to him is Tony Lewis, recruited her out of Chicago. Freshman class president, sophomore class president, junior class president. Sophomore year, though, she had a baby. We put our arms around her, helped her, supported her. She's back in school and resuming her leadership trajectory. The young lady next to her, Karen Romero, is from El Salvador. She's Miss Paul Quinn. She's an undocumented student. Her mother deals and battles with tremendous mental health issues, and she is thriving at our school. I think her grade point average is a 3.8. Next to her is Ariel Clarkson, who's our Student Government Association president. Went to a talented and gifted magnet school. On her way to Howard University, found out she was pregnant and had to stay at home. Went into a very, very dark place. Has started to pull herself out of it. And as a student government president, I would tell you she's doing all right. Next to her is Tiana Washington. She's the freshman star basketball player on our basketball team. Wonderful young lady, was just accepted to the Emerging Leaders Program, University of California this summer. Standing up next to him is perhaps the greatest story that we have at Paul Quinn College. That is Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee was the only freshman selected for a program at the Wharton School for individuals who are interested in getting a PhD. He was selected by the Inroads program to work at Chubb Insurance Companies the past 2 summers. Lumina Foundation is writing a story on the plight of the African American male in higher education. Kevin is one of the 4 young men that they featured. He was selected for our Duke Immerse program, where 8 Duke students and 7 Paul Quinn students went to school together for a semester. By the way, they all had to go to therapy for a year after that. Kevin won a fast pitch contest with a business idea. Is really an extraordinary young man. He's done far more than that as well. He's homeless. He lives in our dorm. All right, is an extraordinary talent. And next to him is Ryan Abrams, which I'd like to tell you there's something remarkable about him, but he's just a really good-looking kid. So we put him in the picture, all right? His mother is a television anchor. His father is a 90s pop star. So, you know, we just wanted to show you that not everyone is a hard luck story. So I would ask you to keep this in mind as you're thinking about higher education. You can do amazing things if you simply care enough to do amazing things. This isn't complicated. This is about caring about something larger than yourself. This is about we over me. The needs of our students, the needs of our communities have to supersede the selfish wants of our institutions. If you do that, I think you can write a pretty special story for yourselves. Thank you, and I look forward to talking to you down the road.